Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel Educate Yourself. Friends, in this tutorial we're going to talk about the tongue, some introduction to the tongue, some external features of the tongue, muscles of the tongue, intrinsic and extrinsic muscles of the tongue, arterial supply of the tongue, venous drainage of the tongue, lymphatic drainage of the tongue, nerve supply of the tongue, and at last some clinical anatomy. So friends, stay connected. So friends, let's have an introduction to the tongue. The tongue is a muscular organ situated in the floor of the tongue. It is associated with the functions of the taste, functions of the speech, functions of the chewing, functions of deglutition, and the cleansing of mouth and teeth. Friends, let's briefly discuss about some external features of the tongue. Remember friends, the tongue contains root, body and tip, and two surfaces. One is the dorsal surface and the inferior surface. Friends, this is dorsal surface over here. Let's talk about dorsal surface. uh, Dorsal surface contains two parts. One is the pharyngeal part and the other one is the oral part here. This is the oral part, which is anterior two-third is the oral part, and the posterior one-third, that's the pharyngeal part, which is divided by a sulcus terminalis. It's the sulcus terminalis over here, which is V-shaped, and they meet at a point that's known as the foramen cecum. The foramen cecum represents the site from which the thyroid diverticulum grows down in the embryo. Friends, you have to remember this point, that the foramen cecum represents the site from which the thyroid diverticulum grows down into the embryo. Friends, this is the inferior surface of the tongue. Let us briefly discuss about inferior surface of the tongue. Remember friends, the inferior surface of the tongue is covered with a smooth mucous membrane, which shows a fold called the frenulum. Here, this is the frenulum over here. On either side of the frenulum, as you can see, there is a prominence produced by the deep lingual veins. These are the deep lingual veins. More laterally, there is a fold called the plica fibrata. As you can see over here, this is the plica fibrata. Friends, let's talk about the papillae of the tongue. Remember, friends, papillae are the projections of mucous membrane which give the anterior two-thirds of the tongue its characteristic roughness. These are of following types, friends. One is the circumvallate papillae over here, and follate papillae, filiform papillae, and fungiform papillae. Let's discuss one by one. Friends, let's talk about circumvallate papillae. Friends, it is also known as vallate papillae. As you can see over here, these circumvallate papillae are stretched immediately after the sulcus terminalis. Each papillae is a cylindrical projection surrounded by a circular sulcus. The walls of the papillae have taste buds. Now, friends, talking about fingiform papillae, as you can see here, fingiform papillae, they are numerous near the tip and margins of the tongue, but some of them are also scattered over the dorsum. These are smaller than the valid papillae. As you can see here, these are the larger papillae and these are the small papillae over here, but larger than the filiform papillae. They are larger than the filiform papillae here. These are small, as you can see in this video. Each papillae consists of a narrow pedicle and a large rounded head. And friends, remember, these papillae are distinguished by their red color. Now friends, talking about filiform papillae, they are also known as conical papillae, and they cover the precircular area of the dorsum of the tongue, as you can see here, and give it a characteristic velvety appearance. They are the smallest and more numerous of the lingual papillae. Each is pointed and covered with keratin. The apex is often split into filamentous process. Now, friends, let's talk about the muscles of the tongue. Remember, friends, the contains two types of muscles. One is the intrinsic muscles, and the other one is extrinsic muscles. Let's first talk about the intrinsic muscles. Remember, friends, the intrinsic muscles occupy the upper part of the tongue and attach to the submucous fibrous layer and to the median fibrous septum. Remember, friends, the intrinsic muscles are four. One is a superior longitudinal muscle, the other one is the inferior longitudinal muscle, and the third one is transverse muscle, and the fourth one is the vertical muscle. So, friends, tongue contains four intrinsic muscles. One is superior longitudinal, inferior longitudinal, transverse muscle, and vertical muscle, as you can see in this diagram. Now, friends, let's talk about superior longitudinal muscle. Remember, friends, superior longitudinal muscle, it helps us to elevate the tip and sides of the tongue superiorly, and this shapes the tongue dorsum into a concavity, and it shortens the tongue. So you have to remember that it makes a tongue concave like. And now talking about the inferior longitudinal muscle, the function of the inferior longitudinal muscle, it acts to curl the tip of the tongue inferiorly, and this is the opposite to the superior longitudinal muscle, so it makes the tongue convex in shape, and it also shortens the tongue. Now, friends, talking about the third intrinsic muscle, which is the transverse muscle. Friends, remember that the transverse muscle helps in the contraction of the transverse muscles, and it acts to narrow and increase the depth of the tongue. And talking about the fourth muscle, that's the vertical muscle. It is found at the borders of the anterior border of the tongue, and remember, friends, it makes the tongue broader in shape. Now, friends, talking about the extrinsic muscles of the tongue, they are also four in number, as you can see here in this diagram. The extrinsic muscles are Genioglossus, Hyoglossus, Styloglossus, and the other one is the Palatoglossus, which is not visible in this diagram. Friends, remember that the extrinsic muscles are connected with their respective parts. As you can see, the genioglossus connects the tongue with the mandible, and the hyoglossus connects the tongue with the hide bone, and the styloglossus connects the tongue with the styloid process. And the other one is the palatoglossus, which is not seen here, connects the tongue with the palate. Friends, remember H for hyoglossus and H for hide bone. So it connects the hyoglossus with the hide bone. And remember, friends, the styloglossus S connects with the styloid process, S for styloglossus and S for styloid process. And the other muscle, platoglossus, P for platoglossus and P for palate. So this is the mnemonic by which you can remember these muscles to the connection with the respective parts. Friends, now talking about the functions of each muscle. Genioglossus muscle here, it helps in the depression of the tongue, so it depresses the tongue, and it pulls the posterior part of tongue forwards and protrudes the tongue. And friends, remember the point, it is also known as the life-saving muscle. Now, friends, talking about the hyoglossus muscle, as you can see here, hyoglossus muscle, it also depresses tongue and makes a dorsum convex, and retracts the protruded tongue. Now, talking about the styloglossus muscle, the function of the styloglossus, it pulls tongue upwards and backwards. And now, talking about the last extrinsic muscle, that's the palatoglossus. Palatoglossus pulls up the root of tongue, approximates the palatoglossal arch, and thus closes the oropharyngeal isthmus. Hope guys you like my video. Please don't forget to comment, share, and subscribe.